I don't think I've talked to you in a while, though. I mean, we're big fans of The Chosen, and how does it feel, though, to create an instant Christmas classic?
Well, an instant Christmas classic that's been 50 years in the making. The book's been out for 50 years. I've been pursuing the rights to this movie for almost 20 years, constantly getting told no because it was at another studio or with another filmmaker. And it was because of The Chosen that ultimately, after years of, a couple different studios not really getting it off the ground, the rights holders eventually got the rights back and had become fans of The Chosen by that point. And so I was finally worthy of this project. And so now that it's been in theaters and had a very successful run and got a very good response, it's a dream come true and a calling fulfilled because I've been wanting to do this for so long. So it's really beautiful to see.
Yeah, it shows that there's a lot of love that you have for this story, and it's a very touching and yet very funny movie. And I guess you had to wait when things were just right because Judy Greer is attached to it, and
Mm.
wow, what a cast!
Yeah, Judy Greer, Pete Holmes, Lauren Graham, who's the
Yeah,
the, the amazing Lauren Graham, and then these kids that we were able to find from all over the world, just fantastic. And so when I read this book almost 20 years ago to my kids. I was laughing. It's very nostalgic. The story's great. I'm like, man, this is so witty and fun. I get to the end, I'm crying so hard I can't even see the pages. I closed the book because it was so moving and the message and the storyline is so wonderful. And I said, I have to make this movie. Now, fast forward, almost 20 years later, when I finally get a chance to do it, I'm like, okay, now the pressure's on. I have to live up to my own expectations, my own vision for it, what I know the audience loves about this project and about this story. And now that I get a chance to talk to you, after you and I have talked about the Chosen.
yeah, many times.
Gosh, I think the first time we talked was 4 or 5 years ago, maybe three or 4 years. But either way, the fact I'm able to talk to you and say there's a movie called The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, and I made it, and you can watch it now is such a wonderful place to be and so exciting after all these years. It's really beautiful and it feels tremendous, especially to see the impact that it's had and the audiences who've been moved by it, but then also the New York Times giving it a positive review. 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's a kind of a cherry on top that I didn't expect.
It's such a lovely, lovely film, and it reminds me so much of Christmases when I was young, and
Right.
just the community. But I have this weird question that W.C. Fields once said, you never work with children.
Or
That's not,
animals, yeah.
that's not true, right?
Well, I would say it's not totally true, but the reasons why it was said are true. Sometimes you have to work with kids, but I'll tell you this: Pete and Judy will be the first to tell you that they were sometimes the kids were better behaved than Pete and Judy were on set. It was a madhouse for 28 days trying to get this story told, but they were wonderful and it was worth it. The kids really are great, and when you find great actors who happen to be kids, um, your job is to not only direct a good project, but also to be in many ways a set parent. But for a movie like this, where you've got sometimes in the scene 15 to 20 kids in one scene, it's the amount of ADHD in one room could be put on display at the Smithsonian. It is directing become like, boy, I don't remember signing on for this, but I think it added to the movie. I mean, I think that when people see the movie and they talk about how authentic it feels and how fun it feels, but then also how heartwarming it feels, uh, that really does come from the filming experience. The
Yeah.
kids in this movie really, really stepped up and really did a beautiful, beautiful job. I was very fortunate, but we did have a great camaraderie. The filming of the movie does reflect the spirit of the movie and the story that we're telling.
Uh, when I saw the film, I mean, my wife is such a huge fan of The Chosen, and when we went to see this in the theater, um, really she was blown away by the love in this story, the amount of fun she had. I just ordered it today just for her for Christmas present because that's all she wanted was that movie.
Oh,
So
great.
yeah, and it's in our house, I think it's going to replace A Christmas Story as our go-to film on Christmas Eve.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. I mean, my Christmas Eve movie every year is It's a Wonderful Life. We
Mhm.
watch it as a family every time. I cry every time. Christmas Story is in the mix. Home Alone. There's kind
Die
of a.
Hard. Uh,
I, are you with me on the fact that Die Hard is in fact a Christmas movie?
yes, I am.
Okay, good. So we're on the correct side.
Yeah.
So there's that kind of realm of 4 to 5 classics that you watch every year. The George C. Scott Christmas Carol, which
That's
I
my
still
absolute favorite.
yeah
George
it's
C. Scott was brilliant in that.
yeah it's the best one.
Yeah.
And so there's that handful of movies. And here's the thing: when I read Best Christmas Pageant Ever, and almost 20 years ago, and knew I wanted to make it as a movie and hoped that I could get the rights. When I finally got a chance to make it, one of the things that I thought was, I'm making this as much for me
Yeah.
and for my family to have a new Christmas classic, because of all the Christmas classics we just mentioned, they're wonderful and I have nothing bad to say about them, but there hasn't been one, A, in a long time, but B, one that actually also spotlights the Jesus story.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't do it in a way that makes it feel like you're at a church project. Plenty of non-believers have loved this movie, and as we mentioned, the critics gave it a good rating. But it just reminds you, in the midst of all these other stories, let's just not leave out
Yeah.
the Jesus story. Let's not leave out literally where this whole Christmas came from. It seems like we should have at least one story in the mix that captures that. And so I'm very happy that this movie has resonated and could be a potential Christmas classic, and happens to point people towards the truth of the original story.
Yeah, I think it does that in a way where it's, like everything else you do, it doesn't hit you over the head. It just
Right.
is a beautiful, beautiful way of presenting the Christmas story and how it changes people.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just a wonderful film that way. I have to ask you about season 5 of The Chosen. I mean, that's
Yeah.
going to be premiering pretty soon, and you must be so blown away by the amount of love and following that this series has.
Well, I mean, even just talking to you now is kind of it's in many ways a marker of how far we've come. Because when you and I last spoke,
Mm.
I mean, we're still trying to get people to hear of the show,
Yeah.
much less watch it. And now that I'm talking to you again, and season 5 is completed, comes out in theaters in late March, and then streaming shortly thereafter. And I'm literally last night was up late working on the scripts for season 6.
Wow.
It's impossible to believe sometimes. It's like, how do we get to this place? And the response that we've gotten, and especially in your neck of the woods, I can't go anywhere in Utah without someone stopping me on the street and thanking me for The Chosen. It's just a beautiful thing. And um, I've said this to you before. I'm not motivated by the success. I'm not motivated by the numbers, but the impact of it, what people say to me when they do greet me and thank me for the show will never get old. It really seems to have changed a lot of lives, and I just feel very fortunate to have been part of it.
Yeah, and it came at the right time. It was,
Yeah,
all of those things, all those points of light,
yeah.
you had to hit at the right time because any other time I think in the world it wouldn't have gone as far as this. But now it's in what, 600 languages or so, and
That's yeah, it's going to be in 600 languages eventually, right? It is the most dubbed show in history. We passed Baywatch as the most dubbed show ever. It's already been translated into over 100 languages. It's going to be up to 600 languages. It's in every country in the world. There's been multiple tipping points that have caused it to grow. It's been really beautiful. And yet what's funny is when we're on set or when I'm, in my home writing like I was last night, it's still the same as it was from day one. Whether one person's watching or 100 or 1 million or now over, well over hundreds of millions, the writing and the directing and all that is still the same. It's still just us trying to tell the best story we can and honor God in the best way we can.
and as we close thank you so much, Dallas. I know how busy you are, and it's Christmas, so you're even busier
Yeah.
because of Santa
Yes.
Claus.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm so glad that you didn't do what a lot of other shows have done is hire big name actors. You can, and I bet you have a lot of people knocking on your door saying, "Hey, we want to." But I think it's done so humbly that in that respect that it just resonates even more.
Yeah, I think there's something about the fact that when you watch our show, you're not distracted by the typical what could become the Hollywoodization of it, where you're like, "Oh, I know that actor." I mean, we've got actors who, of course, who wonderful actors who've been doing this a long time, who are recognizable, but not in a distracting way where they feel shoehorned into this story. Um, we really have just maintained our obsession with authenticity. These people need to feel like they lived in first century Galilee and first century Jerusalem, and could have been a Roman soldier. We've maintained, I think, that integrity, and I think that's been the key, one of the keys to the success of it.
Dallas, I want to thank you so much for your time. I want to thank you for all that you do. I'm still sending in my headshots. I want to be an actor on your show. That's
Well,
all.
sometime you got come by the set, we'll get you in there. You've got the olive skin, you don't look quite as white as I do or some of the other
Yeah,
people in Utah, so we'll fit you in at some point.
fat bald guys are not usually around Jerusalem. So, uh,
Well, maybe we'll see.
I adore you and say happy Christmas to you, to your wife, your family, and your chosen family, and enjoy the holidays.
You as well. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas.